It all started with a broken vacuum cleaner. Not just any vacuum cleaner. No, this was the overpriced, high-tech, never loses suction kind that Nancy absolutely had to have last Christmas. The one she spent 2 weeks researching like she was buying a new car. The one she convinced me was an investment in our future. Which, as it turns out, was a blatant lie because 7 months later, here I was, standing in our living room, holding the useless thing upside down like a confused caveman while it made a noise that sounded like a dying goose. You spent $600 on this, I muttered to myself, shaking it as if that would somehow fix it. Nancy was at work, so I was left alone to battle this mechanical disaster. After 40 minutes of sweat and profanity-free rage, I realized I had 2 options: take it apart and risk never getting it back together, or admit defeat and call customer service. I chose the latter. And that's when it happened. I was on hold, listening to the most aggressively cheerful piano music ever composed, when I decided to kill time by flipping through the vacuum's manual. Not because I actually planned to read it. Who does that? But because it was sitting right there on the coffee table under a stack of mail. Now, I don't know if you've ever experienced one of those moments where something completely insignificant turns out to be the beginning of your personal apocalypse. But that's exactly what happened when I picked up that pile of mail. Because right under it, hidden in plain sight, was a hotel key card. At first, I just stared at it, blinked a few times, thought maybe my brain was malfunctioning. There was a perfectly logical explanation for this, right? Maybe Nancy found it somewhere. Maybe it was a souvenir from one of our trips. Maybe I had a secret second life I'd somehow forgotten about. I flipped it over. The logo was from a hotel in our own town. And there was a sticky note stuck to the back with a time and a room number scribbled in Nancy's handwriting. Well, that was interesting. I dropped the vacuum, which wheezed like it was relieved to be free from my abuse, and sat down on the couch, holding the key card between my fingers like it was a piece of radioactive material. This had to be a misunderstanding. Nancy wasn't the cheating type. She was the right grocery lists in perfect alphabetical order type. The color code the closet type. The research vacuum cleaners for 2 weeks type. And yet, there it was. A hotel key card, with her handwriting on it. I should have stopped there. Should have just confronted her like a normal, emotionally stable adult. But no, that would have been too easy. Instead, I made the executive decision to go full detective mode. Now, for the record, I am not built for espionage. My skills include fixing things around the house, making a decent burger, and remembering exactly which drawer we keep the takeout menus in. That's it. I don't know how to break into email accounts or clone phone data or whatever they do in the movies. But I do know how to Google things. And so, 20 minutes later, after an embarrassing amount of trial and error, I found myself staring at the online booking system for the very hotel in question. I had no idea if this was going to work, but I typed in Nancy's email address, held my breath, and hit forgot password. And guess what? She had her account set up with an autofill password recovery question. Even better? The question was, what's your husband's middle name? Daniel. The answer was Daniel. Me. I typed it in, hit enter, and just like that, I was in. And there it was. A reservation. Last Friday. Room 214. So, not only had Nancy gone to a hotel 5 miles from our house, but she had also been dumb enough to use my own middle name as the key to her digital trail of shame. Honestly, at this point, I wasn't even angry yet. Just deeply, profoundly fascinated by her incompetence. But I wasn't done. Oh no. I had questions. Who was she meeting? How long had this been going on? Was I about to become one of those men in tragic country songs? I needed more evidence. Which is why I did the most unhinged thing I've ever done in my life. I booked the same hotel room. Not just the same hotel. The exact same room. Because if there's one thing I know about hotels, it's that housekeeping is not always as thorough as they claim to be. And if there was even the slightest chance that Nancy or her mystery man had left something behind, I was going to find it. So, that evening, under the guise of a work event, I packed a bag, drove to the hotel, and checked into room 214. Now, let me tell you something. There is nothing, and I mean nothing, more surreal than standing in a hotel room, staring at a bed where your wife has very possibly committed marital crimes. It was a perfectly normal room. Beige walls. A generic painting of a flower. The kind of bedspread that looks like it hasn't been washed since the Reagan administration. And yet, it felt like enemy territory. I checked the drawers. Nothing. Opened the closet. Empty. Looked under the bed, which is how I discovered that some previous guest had left behind a single sock and a crumpled-up fast food receipt from 2018. Not helpful. I was about to give up when I spotted something on the desk. A napkin. A napkin with writing on it. I walked over, heart pounding, and picked it up. There, in Nancy's handwriting, were 3 little words that made my stomach drop. Same time next. Next what? Next week? Next month? Next time she decides to torpedo our marriage? And that was when the anger finally kicked in. Because now, it wasn't just a suspicion. It wasn't just a hotel key card with a scribbled room number. It was proof. Nancy was having an affair, and she was planning to do it again. I sat down on the bed, the crime scene, and took a deep breath. My wife was a lot of things, but she was also predictable. And if she had a next planned, then I was going to be there for it. Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I didn't sleep in that hotel room. I could have, but something about lying on that bed made my skin crawl. So instead, I spent half the night sitting in the questionably clean armchair, staring at the wall like a man who had just discovered that his marriage might have a secret second season, one where he wasn't the main character. The napkin with "same time next" was sitting on the desk in front of me like it was waiting for a response. I had read it at least 50 times, hoping it would suddenly transform into something less incriminating. But no, it stubbornly stayed the same. I even checked the trash can in case Nancy and her guest had decided to leave behind a detailed itinerary of their rendezvous. But all I found was an empty soda can and a crumpled-up tissue, which I immediately regretted touching. By 2 a.m., I had reached the 5 stages of grief in record time and had entered a completely new stage, petty investigation mode. I pulled out my phone and opened Nancy's calendar. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why do I have access to my wife's calendar? Simple. Because I'm the poor soul who reminds her of things she puts in the calendar and then immediately forgets. Dentist appointments? Me. Car inspections? Me. Her own mother's birthday? Me. And that's how I noticed an event for Thursday evening labeled, in the most suspiciously vague way possible, Pilates. Now, let me be clear. Nancy does not do Pilates. Nancy does not even pretend to do Pilates. Nancy considers stretching before getting out of bed a workout. And yet, there it was. A neatly scheduled 1-hour Pilates session at the exact time, same time next, would suggest. I sat there, staring at my phone, genuinely impressed that my wife had chosen something so hilariously out of character. Like, if she was going to invent a fake hobby, at least pick something believable. Book club. Volunteering. Studying tax fraud just for fun. But Pilates? That was just lazy. That's when I made my second bad decision of the night. I wasn't going to confront her yet. No, that would be too easy. Instead, I was going to follow her. And so, 3 days later, on Thursday evening, I found myself sitting in my car, parked a safe distance away from our house, waiting for Nancy to leave for her Pilates class. She came out the front door at exactly 6:45 p.m., wearing leggings and a tank top in a very "I am totally a person who works out" kind of way. I almost applauded her commitment to the bit. Now, I don't consider myself an expert at following people, but I had seen enough crime shows to know the basics. Keep a safe distance. Don't act suspicious. Don't crash into the person you're tailing. Nancy pulled out of the driveway and started driving across town. I stayed a few cars behind, gripping the steering wheel like I was defusing a bomb. If she actually went to a Pilates class, I was going to have to reevaluate my entire life. But she didn't. Instead, she pulled into the parking lot of a hardware store. A hardware store. I sat there, blinking at the store sign, wondering if this was some kind of elaborate setup to throw me off her trail. But then Nancy got out of the car, checked her reflection in the driver's side window, like she was preparing for something far more important than buying a screwdriver, and walked inside. I followed. Because, at this point, I had committed to the role of husband who secretly thinks his wife is up to no good. The hardware store was relatively empty, because, shockingly, not many people decide that 7 p.m. on a Thursday is the ideal time to browse power tools. Nancy, however, walked in with purpose. She strolled past the aisles of paint and lawn equipment like she had a mission. And then I saw it. She wasn't shopping. She was meeting someone. A man was already standing near the lumber section, waiting. And not just standing, pacing. Nervous. Anxious. like a man about to discuss something he really shouldn't be discussing in a public place surrounded by shelves full of nails and hammers. I ducked behind a display of overpriced flashlights and watched. Nancy reached him, and he immediately started talking. Not the kind of talking where two old friends catch up. No, this was frantic talking. Hands moving, eyes darting around like he was afraid of being overheard. I was too far away to hear, but based on body language alone, this was not a casual chat about home improvement projects. Nancy kept glancing over her shoulder. Paranoid, like she knew she shouldn't be here. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just cheating. This was something else. I pulled out my phone and discreetly snapped a photo of the two of them. If she was going to lie about Pilates, I wanted proof that her version of exercise involved top-secret meetings in the lumber aisle. They spoke for about 10 minutes before Nancy abruptly turned and walked away. The man ran a hand through his hair, muttered something under his breath, and disappeared down another aisle. I followed Nancy back outside, watching as she climbed into her car and pulled away. I could have gone home, could have waited for her to get back and pretend I knew nothing. But I didn't. Instead, I turned around, walked right back into the hardware store, and went looking for the man. Because if Nancy wasn't going to tell me what was going on, then I was going to find out for myself. I never thought I'd find myself lurking in the plumbing section of a hardware store, trying to track down a man who was having a very suspicious conversation with my wife. But, as it turns out, marriage is full of surprises. Some good, some, like this. The guy had disappeared down an aisle near the shelving units, so I casually, not casually at all, strolled in that direction, pretending to be deeply interested in storage solutions. At first, I thought I lost him. Then, just as I was about to give up and start aggressively stacking plastic bins to work out my emotions, I spotted him near the door hinges. Now, let me paint a picture here. This was not a mystery man straight out of a spy movie. No dark sunglasses, no suit, no secret earpiece. Instead, he looked like a guy who either sold used office furniture or was permanently one bad decision away from asking if he could borrow $50. Mid-40s, thinning hair, wearing a polo shirt that was just a little too tight in a "I still believe this fits me" kind of way. I had a decision to make. I could walk away, go home, and let the mystery sit in my brain like an undiagnosed medical condition, slowly driving me insane. Or I could talk to him. Obviously, I chose the option that would cause me maximum emotional damage. I grabbed a random box of screws off the shelf, walked over, and, without giving myself time to second-guess it, spoke. "Hey man, you know anything about these?" I held up the box. He looked at me, then at the screws, then back at me like I had just asked him to explain the stock market. There's screws. Solid start. Clearly a professional. I nodded like that was the exact answer I was hoping for. Cool. Just making sure I'm not about to buy something dumb. I gave him an exaggerated laugh, like we were two old pals who definitely weren't in the middle of the most awkward encounter of my life. "You come here a lot?" He shifted on his feet. "I mean, yeah, sometimes." "Nice. Me too. I'd been here maybe twice in the past year, but whatever. Gotta love a store where you can fix your house and meet people, right?" His face barely moved, but I saw it, the tiniest flicker of nervous recognition. Bingo. He knew. He knew exactly what I was getting at. Now, a normal person might have backed off, might have let him stew in his own guilt until it cracked him open like an overripe fruit. But I was not feeling particularly normal. So, I went in for the kill. "By the way," I said, lowering my voice just enough to make it sound like I was about to say something very serious. "You and my wife looked like you were having a pretty deep conversation earlier." Boom. Direct hit. His reaction was a work of art. First, panic. Eyes darting, mouth slightly open. The universal expression of a man whose brain was screaming error. Do not engage. Then, the recovery attempt. Clearing his throat, adjusting his shirt, trying to act casual despite actively sweating through his collar. "Oh, Nancy? Yeah. We were just, talking. Right. Just two casual acquaintances discussing hardware store philosophy in hushed tones while looking over their shoulders every 5 seconds. I nodded like that was completely believable. Nice. Love that. Talking's important. Keeps relationships healthy, you know? He did not love that. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. I gave him a friendly clap on the shoulder. "Anyway, since we're all making new friends tonight, what's your name?" He hesitated. And in that moment, I knew. He did not want me to know his name, which only made me want it more. Eventually, he muttered, "It's Carl." I had never met a Carl I trusted. This was no exception. "Well, Carl," I said, making sure to say his name the way someone might say congratulations, "you just lost a game you didn't know you were playing. I'd love to know what you and my wife were talking about." Carl made the face of a man debating whether running out of the store and never returning to this town was a viable option. Then, finally, he sighed. "Look, man, it's not what you think. That's exactly what people say when it's absolutely what you think." I leaned against the shelf, pretending to be relaxed, despite the fact that every muscle in my body was vibrating with pure chaos. "Great," I said. "So what is it?" Carl scratched the back of his head. Listen, she just needed advice on something, okay?" "Advice?" Oh, this was getting better by the second. I stared at him. Didn't say a word. Just let the silence stretch out like a rubber band until he was the one who broke. "I swear, I'm not sleeping with her," he blurted out. "Oh, so now we were skipping ahead." "I never said you were," I said, watching him self-destruct in real time. Carl rubbed his face. "Look, dude, I don't want to be in the middle of this. I was just doing a favor." I crossed my arms. "A favor?" He nodded. "Yes, a favor. That's it. And this favor involves—" Carl exhaled sharply. "Nancy might be in a little trouble." Now, that was unexpected. I blinked. Trouble? He hesitated, like he was weighing whether he should tell me or just sprint for the exit. Then, reluctantly, he muttered, "Financial trouble." I had not been prepared for that answer. "Explain," I said, my brain doing backflips trying to process how Nancy's Pilates lie had somehow turned into an economic crisis. Carl glanced around again, then leaned in slightly. "She borrowed some money. From some people. And now she's trying to figure out how to pay them back." That was news. Nancy and I had a joint account. As far as I knew, there were no secret financial disasters lurking in our budget. But apparently, I was wrong. I squinted at him. "And what does this have to do with you?" Carl looked miserable. Might have been the one who introduced her to them. "Oh, fantastic. Not only was my wife lying about Pilates, but she was also borrowing money from Carl's shady friends, and he had the nerve to act like he was the victim in all this." I took a slow breath. "So, let me get this straight. My wife is in debt. You're the guy who helped her get there. And you just casually decided to discuss all of this in a hardware store." Carl threw up his hands. "It's a public place. Less suspicious that way. Less suspicious. Right. Because when I think totally normal financial discussions, I absolutely think whispering in the lumber section." Carl ran a hand down his face. "Look, man, if you want answers, you need to talk to Nancy." "Oh, don't worry, Carl. That was already the plan." The moment I walked into the house, Nancy was already in full performance mode. Feet up on the couch, scrolling through her phone like she wasn't running some highly questionable side operation behind my back. If I didn't know better, I would have thought she had spent the entire evening meditating and contemplating the meaning of life, not conducting secret financial dealings in the hardware store parking lot. "Hey," she said without looking up. "How was your day?" The classic casual spouse greeting, as if everything in our life was perfectly fine and she wasn't currently starring in the secret life of Nancy. I dropped my keys on the counter and gave her a smile. "Oh, same old, she hummed, still focused on whatever vitally important information her phone was delivering. Probably a deep, intellectual discussion about someone's vacation photos. "Pilates go well?" I asked, watching her face closely. And there it was, the half-second hesitation. A flicker of something before she smoothed her expression and nodded like she hadn't just realized she was supposed to be lying. "Yeah," she said, stretching dramatically. Feeling sore already. I could almost respect the dedication to the act. Almost. Cool. I said, keeping my tone relaxed. "How's Carl?" Her entire body stiffened. Now, I want to be clear, Carl is not a name that inspires immediate panic. If you casually drop Carl into a conversation, nobody is thinking dangerous criminal mastermind. Carl is the name of a guy who works in accounting and gets excited about laminated spreadsheets. And yet, my wife's immediate and visceral reaction to hearing that name told me everything I needed to know. She swallowed. "Carl." I nodded. "Yeah. Mid-40s, bad at lying, sweats under pressure." I gestured vaguely. "Lumber aisle enthusiast?" Her fingers tightened around her phone. "I don't know what you're talking about." Nancy had never been great at improvising, and tonight was no exception. "Oh, come on, babe," I said, keeping my voice dangerously friendly. "You just saw him. I mean, unless Pilates is now being taught by some guy in a polo shirt at the hardware store." Her jaw clenched, and she put down her phone, finally giving me her full attention. "Were you following me?" "Of course not," I said, absolutely lying. "I just happened to be in the hardware store. You know, because I wanted to see what kind of discounts they had on betrayal." She exhaled through her nose. "Daniel, you're overreacting." Now, that was interesting, because, at no point, had I actually accused her of anything yet. I had simply asked questions. And yet, she was already in damage control mode. I crossed my arms. "So let's clear this up. You're not having an affair with Carl." "No," she snapped, looking genuinely offended that I had even suggested it. Which was good, because, frankly, I had standards. If she was going to betray me, at least pick someone impressive. "So," I continued, "if you're not sneaking around with Carl, that means you're just, what? Taking financial advice from him." Nancy's face did something complicated, like she was debating whether to double down on the lie or throw Carl directly under the bus. I raised an eyebrow. "I'd love to know exactly why my wife is having secret meetings about money with a guy who looks like he gets rejected from pyramid schemes." She let out a sharp sigh, like I was the problem here. "It's not a big deal." That was the moment I decided to go nuclear. I pulled out my phone, tapped on the gallery, and turned the screen toward her. A picture of her and Carl, standing way too close, whispering like two people plotting a bank heist in the middle of a public store. Nancy stared at it, then at me, and for the first time, she looked truly alarmed. Because now I had proof. I smiled. "So, want to try that again?" For a moment, I thought she was going to confess. Thought she was finally going to give me the truth. But no. Instead, she doubled down. "You're crazy," she said, standing up and grabbing her phone. "I can't believe you'd spy on me like this." Ah, yes. The classic, let's make the person asking questions feel like they're the villain. Unfortunately for Nancy, I had graduated top of my class in petty investigation. "Crazy," I repeated. "Oh no. What's crazy is my wife faking Pilates so she can sneak off to talk to a guy who, by the way, already ratted her out." Her face froze, and that was when I knew I had her. "Carl talks under pressure," I continued cheerfully. "He told me all about your financial trouble." I made air quotes. "And how you needed advice." Nancy inhaled sharply through her nose. "Carl's an idiot." "I agree," I said. "But that's not really the point, is it?" She shifted on her feet, and I could practically see the gears in her head trying to find an escape route. Which is why I decided to make sure she didn't get one. "You know what's funny?" I said, voice light. "I checked our bank account today, and do you know what I didn't see? Any financial trouble." Her lips parted slightly, eyes flicking toward her phone like she was about to make a run for it. "And do you know what that tells me?" I continued. "It tells me that whatever problem you have, it's not our problem." I smiled. "It's yours." Silence. Nancy's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. Finally, she muttered, "Daniel, I can explain." "Oh, you will explain," I said, stepping closer. "Because I would love to know exactly what my wife is doing behind my back. And don't you dare say Pilates again." Nancy hesitated. Then, finally, she broke. "I borrowed money," she said quickly, words tumbling out like she was trying to outrun the consequences. "But look, it's not what you think." "It's not." I held up a hand. "Let's make this easy. Answer one question." She swallowed. I leveled my gaze at her. "Did you borrow money to help yourself?" I asked. "Or did you borrow money to help someone else?" Her breath caught, and in that moment, I saw it. The truth. Nancy had borrowed money. For someone else. Someone she didn't want me to know about. I let out a slow, amused laugh. "Wow." She flinched. "Daniel, please." I shook my head, grinning. "Nah, don't Daniel, please me. I'm impressed." I motioned toward her dramatically. "Look at you, living a whole secret life. I mean, I always knew you liked a little mystery, but this is next level." She rubbed her forehead like she was about to get a migraine. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "I understand that my wife borrowed money for someone she won't even name." Her silence told me everything, and that's when I decided I was done. "All right," I said, rolling my shoulders. "You know what? You keep your secrets." I turned toward the hallway. Nancy frowned. "Where are you going?" "Oh, just making a quick call," I said, shooting her a smile over my shoulder. Figured I'd check out a lawyer's retainer fees. You know, just in case. And that's when she panicked. Nancy did this thing when she panicked. She'd press her lips together like she was physically trying to stop words from escaping, as if silence would somehow turn back time and erase whatever had just happened. I'd seen it before, when she forgot to pay the internet bill, when she got pulled over for a rolling stop, when she accidentally backed into a shopping cart and tried to convince me it came out of nowhere. But this wasn't forgetting a bill or denting a car. This was her entire secret falling apart in real time, and I was going to enjoy every second of it. "You're not serious," she said, arms crossed so tightly it looked like she was trying to hold herself together. "Oh, I'm extremely serious," I said, pulling my phone out and tapping the screen like I was about to dial someone. "Do you have any idea how fast lawyers will pick up when they hear the words cheating spouse? It's like catnip for them." Nancy's eyes widened. "Daniel, come on." "Come on what?" I shot back. "Come on, let's pretend you didn't just admit to borrowing money for some mysterious other person you refused to name." I leaned against the wall, crossing my own arms. "Or come on, let's keep playing this game where I ask questions and you give me half-truths." She inhaled sharply, nostrils flaring, the universal sign of I am realizing I do not have control over this situation. I tilted my head. "Tell you what, Nancy, I'll put the phone down if you tell me who the money was for." Silence. Absolute, glorious silence. She was backed into a corner, and she knew it. She could either tell the truth or stand there looking guilty while I searched for divorce attorneys. I saw the exact moment she decided to pick a third option. "I wasn't cheating," she said, voice clipped, like if she said it forcefully enough, it would automatically become true. "Great," I said unfazed. "So tell me who the money was for." She pressed her lips together again. This was too easy. I sighed dramatically, shaking my head. "You know what the worst part is? If you had just told me from the start, I probably wouldn't have been this mad." I waved my phone around. "But now I have to assume the worst. Now I have to assume there's some other guy involved, because my wife refuses to give me a straight answer." Nancy looked like she was about to break something. And then, finally, she cracked. "It was for Marcus." I blinked. Marcus. Marcus. Of all the people on earth. Nancy had a lot of bad decisions in her past, but Marcus was her crowning achievement. A guy who had a master's degree in being an absolute disaster. A human wrecking ball of stupidity. The ex-boyfriend who had been so impressively unemployed that he once tried to start a pyramid scheme out of our garage. I squinted at her. "Please tell me you mean a different Marcus." She groaned, rubbing her forehead. "Daniel. Because the Marcus I'm thinking of," I continued, ignoring her, "is the guy who borrowed $3,000 from his cousin and spent it all on a drone business before realizing he didn't actually know how to fly drones." Nancy exhaled slowly. "It's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think," I said, crossing my arms again. "You gave money to your unemployed ex who, last I checked, was living in a converted van." She looked guilty. "He needed help." I let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "Wow. That's a fascinating way to say I secretly funneled money to a man I used to sleep with while lying to my husband." Her head snapped up. "It wasn't like that." I gave her a very skeptical look. She sighed, shaking her head. "He called me, okay? Said he was in trouble. Needed cash. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd react like this." She motioned vaguely to my entire existence. "Oh, you mean like a guy who just found out his wife is still emotionally and financially invested in her ex-boyfriend?" I clapped my hands together. "Yeah, what a shocking reaction." Nancy groaned again, throwing herself onto the couch. "Daniel, it's not like I was sneaking around behind your back." I gestured wildly. "That is literally what you were doing." She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I had her, and now it was my turn. I took a deep breath, exhaled, and put my phone away. Not because I was backing down. No, this was strategy. "Nancy," I said calmly, "you know what I love about this?" She narrowed her eyes. "What?" I smiled. "That you think I'm stupid." She froze. I nodded. "Yeah. Because, see, I'm supposed to believe you just randomly decided to send money to Marcus out of the kindness of your heart? That you just wanted to help a guy you haven't spoken to in years?" Nancy hesitated. And that was all I needed. I took a step closer. "Or, maybe, you've been talking to him for a while. Maybe you've been in contact with him behind my back for months." I cocked my head. Maybe this wasn't the first time you gave him money. She swallowed. Bullseye. Oh, I really hope you kept receipts, I said, grinning now. Because I would love to see exactly how many goodwill donations you've made to the Marcus is a Loser Foundation. Nancy shot up from the couch, panic written all over her face. Daniel, you're making this into something it's not. Oh, don't worry, I said, my voice light. I'm about to make it into something it is. And then I turned around and walked straight to the office. Nancy followed immediately. What are you doing? I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and began typing. What are you doing? Her voice was sharp now. I gave her a big, innocent smile. Oh, nothing much. Just drafting an email. Her eyes narrowed. To who? I hit the keyboard a few more times. Your boss. Her entire body went rigid. I smirked. You know, since Marcus is such a charity case, I figured maybe we should start a fundraiser. I turned the screen toward her. You think your office would be interested in a GoFundMe? Nancy looked like she wanted to throw my laptop out the window. I leaned back in my chair. Or, I could just tell them the truth. That you've been redirecting our household finances to your deadbeat ex while pretending to go to Pilates. She lost it. Daniel, you wouldn't. Oh, I absolutely would, I said, grinning. Because unlike you, Nancy, I believe in transparency. Her face went pale. She knew. She knew I had her cornered. And I was about to make absolutely sure she never forgot it. Nancy's face went through 4 different shades of panic in about 10 seconds. It was impressive, really. If there were an Olympic event for realizing you just lost all control over a situation, she'd be taking home the gold. You're being ridiculous, she blurted, voice a little too high, a little too fast. You're not seriously going to email my boss. I shrugged. I don't know, Nancy. Should I? Should I tell them that their very professional, very responsible employee has been redirecting funds from our joint account to her unemployed ex? I clicked my tongue. You think they'd be impressed with your financial planning skills? Her arms flailed in an attempted intimidation move that did not work in the slightest. That would be insane. Oh, no. What's insane is thinking you could secretly fund Marcus's questionable life choices without me noticing, I said, spinning my chair slowly for dramatic effect. That's insane. Nancy clenched her fists, trying to regain some footing. Daniel, don't lie, I cut in. Seriously, don't. You already did that for months. The season finale aired. The ratings tanked. She inhaled sharply, but I could tell she had finally realized something. She wasn't talking her way out of this. So, instead, she switched to plan B, guilt trip. Daniel, she said, voice softer now. I get that you're mad. I do. But you don't actually want to ruin my life over this, right? I laughed. Actually laughed. Nancy, you ruined your life. I'm just here for the grand reveal. Her jaw clenched. Okay, fine. I screwed up. She threw her hands up. I made a mistake. But I didn't cheat on you, I swear. I tilted my head. You emotionally cheated. You lied, snuck around, and sent money to a guy who once tried to sell secondhand vape pens on Facebook Marketplace. I mean, do you even hear yourself? She exhaled, rubbing her temples like I was the problem here. Daniel, what do you want? I smiled. Oh, that's easy. I leaned forward, resting my arms on the desk. I want a divorce. Silence. A thick, glorious silence. Nancy stared at me like I had just spoken in another language. You're not serious. I've never been more serious in my life, I said, stretching my arms like a man finally free of back pain. I want you out of this house. I want you to pack up whatever Pilates gear you pretended to own and take it somewhere else. She shook her head, like she could just refuse to accept reality. You're overreacting. Oh, no. I'm reacting exactly the right amount to finding out my wife was secretly funding her ex's midlife crisis. I stood up. You want to fix Marcus's life? Great. You can do it from his place. Her mouth opened, then closed. She was scrambling, reaching for some kind of emotional loophole to talk her way out of this. I wasn't letting her. Daniel, she tried. This isn't worth throwing everything away over. Everything. I repeated. Nancy, what everything? The marriage where I was putting money into our savings while you were out here playing charity fund for your ex-boyfriend. I gestured to the house. This home, which I have paid the majority of for the past 5 years while you were redirecting funds like a corrupt government official? I shook my head. No, there isn't an everything. There's just me finally realizing I've been an absolute idiot for trusting you. Nancy flinched, But I wasn't done. And do you know what the best part is? I smiled, because I was truly, genuinely enjoying this now. You don't get to play the victim. Her face twisted. I never said I was. But you were going to, I cut in. You were going to give me some big speech about how you didn't mean to hurt me, or how you felt guilty the whole time, or how Marcus just really needed help. I waved a hand. But you know what? I don't care. Nancy took a step forward. Daniel, don't, I said, holding up a hand. Do not try to fix this. Her lips parted, but no words came out. And that was when she finally understood. She had lost. She had actually lost. I took a deep breath, exhaling slowly. You can stay here for the weekend. That's it. I want you packed and gone by Monday. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Where am I supposed to go? I grinned. I don't know, Nancy. Maybe Marcus has a spare mattress in his van. Her entire body stiffened. And I felt amazing. I walked to the door, turning back one last time. Oh, and if you try anything sneaky, I waved my phone. I will send an email to your boss. She didn't say anything. She just stood there, looking like a woman who had never thought this would be the outcome. And honestly, that made it even better. Thanks for watching. Rate the story in the comments. Subscribe to the channel